All right. Can anyone time this for me? Just start coughing when it hits 15 minutes. The beautiful transformation that I'm going to share with you guys today began in a janitor's room at the end of a school all by itself on top of this high hill, where I was invited as a painter to show slides of my work. What I didn't realize was that the people, young people that resided in this institution had the most severe physical challenges that I had ever seen, and I suppose the most severe challenges anyone can face, in that the majority could not walk, talk, or use their hands. And as I made my way down the hall by myself to show my slides, I saw people that were very, very moving to see how radically, their heads were held up by wires, their arms were strapped. It was startling and upsetting. And the breakthrough, which changed everything, was the fact that they put me in the janitor's room, which is where they did their art. I mean, it used to be a janitor's room. And because of the system, I ended up with 4 or 5 of these young people in this little room with no air conditioning and no one showing up to tell me what to do with a slide projector or what to do. So I ended up spending a lot of time with them, maybe 30, 40 minutes, sitting silently in this room. And at first I did what some people do, and I avoided their eyes, and I felt very uncomfortable. I wasn't used to seeing such limits on physical ability, since my life was quite free and the sporting life. And I finally came around to go, you need to stop avoiding their eyes. And so I just go, okay, here goes. I looked into their eyes, and I was shocked by the clarity of what they were apparently saying to me, like locking with me. Just like, I'm in here, can you see me? Like clear as a bell. I go, oh my gosh, they're in there, totally in there. I'm like looking at each of them, they're like, they can't move, but they're like signaling me. So I showed the slides, and I could tell that they were really leaning into them. I mean, they were really watching the images. And by the end, I decided, what would it be to live without being able to get a glass of water at night? If you're really, really thirsty, you're not going to get a glass of water. What if a spider was on your arm? You can't brush it off. What if it's hot in the room? You can't open the window. What if you can't talk to anyone? What if you live a life where the world is going on all around you, but without you? What would and if you're totally alive inside, what would that be like to have all of that inside and have no meaningful conduit for it to find a realization? So instead of moving towards technology that was complex, first of all, I went home and I started thinking about how would a person make a real painting, not an art therapy painting, not a recreational painting, but a real painting with total control if you can't move. And the answer was to move not towards the really cool, complex technology of today so much, even though we do use some of that, but to go back in time, or back to the basic beginning of it all, the core of it all, which is what I would call the binary code. And that could be positive, negative, 0, 1, or in the case of a human being, these human beings, it would be a signal for yes and no. And we all know how powerful the binary code is, because everything on your computer is that way. The subatomic world, the macro universe, is all formed and shaped by positive and negative connections. So I thought if they could take control, absolute control of every choice, yes, no, even if they could only do an eye signal, yes, no, they would be able to drive everything. And instead of being spoken to like infants, and having projects that had nothing to do with them, they would take over. And what happened is that they took over immediately, without teaching, without pep talk, without anything. They were in there 100%, but they were locked in a world where they had no opportunities because people were judging them by their outer appearance and locking them down. If their bodies didn't work, they felt like there was no inner life. I said, let's give them a chance to see what their inner life is if they could control everything. So the next, I wouldn't call it primitive, I would call it the most beautiful technology. First of all, we have the binary code. Second, we have the human body, which is awesome, awesome technical tool. And what we did is we married those together rather than have some kind of a octopus that shoots paint, robot, where you'd simply be hiding the person, because someone would have to clean the thing and all that kind of stuff. We said, why not use a human to do the bidding of the artist exactly? And our training became, I wouldn't quite call it Zen, but it's a complete giving up of yourself. We call them trackers. The tracker leaves their ego at the door. They have no co-creation. They make no suggestions. They're not art teachers. They're not therapists. They simply offer menus and manipulate tools based on exact directions from the immobile person. I'll just give you one pixel. If you went up to an artist and you said, and you establish unambiguous yes, no signal, you go, are you ready to paint? Yes. Same painting as last week? Yes. Is this hanging up the right height? Yes. Are you going to use a point system, which is the binary, finding it like this, or the laser? Point system? Yes. So you could go like this, fast. Signal. Is that right? Yes. Yes. Is that right? Yes. Pixel. So you can make an absolute realistic image, with that kind of detail of control. In fact, one of the artists who's verbal, Rafael Garcia, said, he goes, man, I'm going to paint your picture. I'm like, I don't want my picture painted. He goes, sit down. I'm going to study you. You got wrinkles around your eyes? I said, I do. He goes, yeah, don't worry, I'll put them in later. But he had that much control that he could make crow's feet. So what we have now is this human being that is trained to simply act sort of as a technology for the person. And this overleaps what is, we have programs all around the country, and we see what's out there, and what is prevalent is an approach called hand over hand, HOH, where they will take the same person that becomes a superstar with A.R.T, and they will put a crayon in their hand, close the hand, put their hand over their hand, and draw for them. So I don't think you have to be super brainy to know that there's no chance to get what's inside you out through that method. But with A.R.T, it was like a complete bursting out of these people. Just they were living in a void of passivity, and then with painting, the articulate level that they reached was so incredible that it just one thing led to another, and they just started to bloom, bloom, bloom. And one example of a new artist, I went up to the school and I got a class. My own program started there, and I had tons of these young people. They're all trying to get in, and they're all becoming like veterans, and they're showing in Manhattan, and so we get this new guy who somehow we had missed, and they wheel him in and they leave him off, and we said, do you want to paint? What's your signal? Yes. He's shaking, and he's sweating. We've been there for like a couple of years and had not known he was there. So he's fired up, and he decided to go with a laser, which is an idea, head-mounted laser, which basically acts as a finger or a hand where they can't reach out and touch anything. This reaches out any distance and can reach to the canvas and go just and paint freely. So he goes for the laser. He's kicked back in his little wheelchair. And the tractor, he chooses a huge canvas, like, 8 by 7 feet. And he chooses only one color, black. Make sure that's it. Nothing else, black. So you have to get this brush, and the tracker's watching the bead, you know, the bead of light go, and he's driving passionately up into the left upper corner, smacking it and then curving around, and boom, boom, boom. So the whole canvas is raw, and there are flicks of paint coming off it. It's really, really violent, and it's like a roiling storm, boom, boom. And then one of his pals, who is verbal, goes, Tim, I think I know what he's trying to say. I'm like, just let him rock, you know, it's his time. And it's going on and on and on. I know what he's saying. I know what he's trying to say. And finally, when the painting finished, I go, do you mind if he tells us what he thinks you were trying to say? And the guy goes like this, young guy, his name's JR. Go ahead. I go, what was he trying to say? He goes, get me the hell out of here. But if you look at the painting, it is saying that. And so that deep meaning of getting, not only do these people get with fidelity what's in their inner life, not in a cosmic way, in a nuts and bolts real way. They get their thoughts and feelings onto the canvas with fidelity. Everything is right. And for the first time, I think ever, that you could paint with physical paint and have a real physical object, not a printout, through this thing. And so the power of this thing, as we move around like Johnny Appleseed around the country, helping places start their own program, we see this draw further and further to more and more hard-to-reach people that the staff said were absolutely unreachable. And when they would see that they could, for the first time, gain absolute authorship of every step of the process, they would sit up and they would come to life. I mean, people who they said couldn't use a laser because they were bent, when they wanted to use a laser, up they came because the power was theirs. Like a Ferrari, this population, which we love and is out there tonight, is like a Ferrari in a garage with the engine on, and it's in gear, and it's pushing against the door. Woo, woo, woo. They're in there, and all you need to do is open the door, and off they go. So one example of just out of many, of how A.R.T. can reach and be part of a sort of a, I don't know what you would call it, like a transformation, I guess, is this little girl, Nicole. She's in the studio with us, and her buddies, these are young, these are pretty much kids, are already going at it, and she's watching them, and they're like making these shapes and cutting stuff and blending colors, and you can see her raising up in her wheelchair, like, she's fired up. So our rule is always to speak to anyone, even if they're 3, as a fully cognizant adult. So we say to her, Nicole, are you interested in doing this? She's like, obvious. We have the laser and we have the point system. You want to use a point system? And then she goes, la, laser. And we're like, excellent. But the aide runs out of the room holding her heart and just runs out. And after a few minutes, she returns. She's like sweating. She's like crying. And like, are you okay? Can we, should we call someone? She goes, no. She doesn't talk. So her first word was laser. And that came, I believe, from the urgency to take control and to tell people that you're in there. And a person for 9 years that the staff didn't think could talk could. So that, just to sum it up, it's like we're not afraid to use a human being as technology, because it works. And we're not afraid to go back to absolute basics of yes and no. It might sound arduous, but it's actually quite fast and smooth. Pop, 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 pop. The paintings that you're seeing were made without art lessons, coaching. No one but the artist directed every little bit of them. And so we're on our campaign to crisscross the country and help create more of these islands of liberation. Thank you.